Welcome to episode 5 of the Backseat Fighter podcast, the best episode of the Backseat Fighter yet, because this week we have an amazing interview with Joshua Flash Onwardi, who won this weekend at Cage Warriors 180 with a unanimous decision, a dominant performance. He was also the Cage Warriors Academy Series lightweight champion. And of course, we have all of my reactions to UFC 309, the main event between Stipe Miocic, the co-main event between Charles do Bronx Oliveira and Iron Michael Chandler, and all the other fights on the card. So let's get into the episode right now. Today on the Backseat Fighter podcast, I, Charlie Binns, have the absolute honor of speaking with a fighter who's on an absolute tear right now. He's 4-1 in his last 5 and coming off a dominant unanimous decision victory last night at Cage Warriors 180 in London. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Backseat Fighter for the very first time, Joshua Flash Onwardi. Josh, how's it going, man?
Thank you, man. What an intro.
You like that?
Yeah, it was good.
So I guess just first question is, how are you feeling? Not only after that victory, but a great performance last night.
Yeah, I feel good, man. It's been a while since I've won on Cage Warriors, so to get it back was kind of just solidified a few things in my mind for me. So yeah, it's just gonna push me forward to do better moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you about that because I think I saw, I don't know if another interview or another video, you said you were supposed to fight a month earlier on the kind of Academy series.
Yeah.
What did what happened there?
So basically, the Cage Warriors Academy is where I got my title. I have my super lightweight title there. And they had a show coming up. Like a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago. I'm not too sure on the timelines anymore, but kind of just before that show matching played out, I was offered this guy on Cage Warriors 180. So I was kind of in camp for the show prior. Right. And then this one came up, so the camp was slightly extended. And then, here we are.
I wanted to ask you, did that extended training camp have any negative effects, any positive effects coming into this fight?
Not really. I kind of, because I kind of train all the time anyway. I'm never really out of the gym. If anything, really, the only thing that changes is the diet as such, and maybe a few extra sessions here and there. So being in a training environment for an extended amount of time doesn't do any worse to me, right? Or make me feel more tired or whatever. The plan is always to win anyway, fight my best and win.
Right.
So yeah, it's all good.
I've heard a lot of fighters even speak about overtraining as a kind of risk, but that's good that you're kind of able to just keep it consistent. I want to ask you actually, what gym are you training out of? Because I've seen online, it's like there's a couple. There was like MMA clinic, BKK fighters. Yeah. Where are you based out of?
I started my first ever. I threw my first ever punch at the MMA clinic.
Was that the one in? Okay.
In Romford. That's where I'm from, and obviously they have. There's Romford, and they have a branch in Angel and the branch in Buckinghamshire. I live in Romford, so that was always my first. That was my first gym. I threw my first punch there. White belt in Jiu Jitsu there, and from white belt to black belt, that's where I've been. So that's like my staple. And I actually coach there now, so I'm a coach there. Wow. But in terms of MMA, I've been training a lot under Jack Mason at BKK in Colchester. So that's my so it's almost to say like the MMA clinic is where I do all my jiu-jitsu based training, not so much the fight stuff, but when I'm doing fighting and MMA, it's BKK.
And so I want to ask you about, because basically in our region, in the UK, we're not really known for our grappling in terms of our fighters. Like, where did you develop this really dominant grappling style? Was that at the MMA clinic or more under Jack Mason?
So that started at the MMA clinic. So like I said, I threw my first ever punch in MMA clinic, and then I started off just enjoying boxing, and then I remember I used to wait for boxing and watch everyone in their gis doing jiu-jitsu, and I used to say to myself, "There's no way you're getting me rolling around in pajamas. Like, there's no way it's happening." And then tries to do boxing and MMA, and then you find out very quickly that if you ain't got at least no-gi or jiu-jitsu in your game, like you can't survive. You just can't. So I put on the gi, and then it just kind of started to flow in, and now it's probably my best sport. Jiu-jitsu. I can't get enough of it. Wherever I go, I just have to grapple. I have to do it.
Jiu-jitsu is one of those addictive things, isn't it? Like, everyone, once they start jiu-jitsu, they'll never stop, right?
Almost too addictive. Too addictive. Yeah.
No, I started training Muay Thai, like, I would say a month and a half ago. And then, it's just one of those things. I was like, I wanted to start training boxing, and I was like, if like they get more weapons, like there's just more stuff in Muay Thai, right? And then now I'm thinking,
it's more tools. It's more tools.
And then I'm thinking though, like, as you said, if anyone wants to take me to the ground, I've got nothing. So
so that's the kind of the link between MMA clinic and BKK and culture stuff.
Right. So so I guess my next question is, did you have any knowledge of Ambler? Because you obviously had to change the fight date quite like a month out. Did you have any knowledge of Ambler that, like, he was a bigger guy, what the fight was going to look like in a game plan, time to prepare for the fight?
So, okay, now the fight's done, I can talk about it more freely. So I thought Joe, I thought he was more of a, well, he probably is. I thought he was more of a grappler, wrestler sort of guy. But we kind of had it in our mind that because, as I say, me and Jack and my coaches kind of had it in our mind that because he's a grappler, and most people that game plan to fight me go in expecting to be grappled.
Right.
So we thought it would end up being two grapplers that end up boxing each other. And it kind of did start off that way. But then during the mix of the boxing and the striking, it just clicked in my head that I don't think this guy's grappling is better than mine.
Yeah.
I just couldn't feel it. But there was no threat of takedowns. There was.
Yeah, but he was just holding you up against the cage most of the time, right?
Yeah, he had a single leg, and even when he had the single leg, it wasn't the fact that he was holding me the way it looks, but I was actually trying to get a few things off of him holding my single leg. So like,
were you looking for a KIMURA there on the side of the cage?
I was trying to go for a KIMURA, but this is bad of me to say this, but it was on my bad side. So I didn't have the confidence.
I'll cut it out. We'll cut it out.
It was on my bad side. I was like, oh my God. Every submission attempt or sweep I was trying to go for just happened to be on my bad side. And so it looked like I was just holding it. But with the elbows on the single leg, when he took the single leg, I actually planned to like kind of hold him there in that position to get the elbows off. So it's something I practice a lot in the gym. So when guys shooting on me, if they go shooting for a single leg and I'm in the position to drop the elbow, I kind of hold them in the position so it looks like they're stalling on that leg. But really, I don't want them to go away. So I'm kind of holding them closer just so I can land them shots in. And it was going that way. I thought the fight would finish with them elbows, but
no, at one point I definitely thought he was gonna, go down. I don't know if it was the first or second round when he first started landing those elbows. I thought he dropped like one knee and then got back up.
Yeah. I hurt my elbow on his head to the point where I couldn't throw it anymore. Honestly, I couldn't throw it anymore. My Jack screaming, "Do it again!" And I'm telling him, "Jack, my elbow's gone." And he's like, "Don't get my elbow, throw it again." He's out.
Right.
And I tried to do it again, and then the whole hand just went numb. So I couldn't do it. So that's frustrating because that was definitely gonna put him away if I could land maybe a couple more minutes of dropping them elbows in.
Well, I guess you gotta give him some credit.
I'll give him credit for that. I had to give him credit for that.
couldn't be able to take that.
Yeah.
But yeah, even in that fight, I mean, you landed a great spinning back fist at one point, and that's something I've seen you throw before. Even in your in the previous fight against Man Johnson?
Man Johnson.
You that spinning back fist as well. Like, you kind of do a great job, I feel like, of just drawing your opponent, especially because in this fight, he was a taller opponent. So you're kind of drawing him in and then able to kind of throw that spinning back fist once he doesn't expect it, basically. How did you develop that? And when did you realize, this is a good weapon that I have?
That just comes from like, that one's made up. that one's made up. It's like some things are made up, but they end up working. So I just keep them in the game. So that one's made up. But yeah, no. But it also it lands a lot. So I think there's no reason to not keep it in the game plan. Like,
no, of course.
So I'm still kind of like, molding myself as a striker, because I'm not actually a striker. Most of my striking comes from copying stuff, and only recently have I been doing a lot of striking with one of my coaches, Darren O'Gorman. That would have been the video you saw with me at Angel.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely improving in that aspect. I feel like, especially with your timing. I think you've got great timing in the striking already. I have a question that I saw when I saw in the fight. There's one point I feel like you genuinely dragged Ambler across the cage all the way into your corner. Was that on purpose so that you could be closer to your coaches? Because you were kind of talking with your coaches when you were trying to, I think it was in the second round, maybe, when you're trying to lock in a submission. I think you went for a Peruvian necktie at one point. But was that on purpose to try and speak to your coaches, speak to Jack Mason?
So, what was I doing? Jack screams so loud I can hear him from wherever I am in the cage. You can hear him from anywhere. But I was having a conversation with Jack because we were just trying to work out. I was trying to work out what sub to go for, and he was saying threaten the choke to circle out, and so I was threatening the choke, and I was trying to look through the cage and ask him which way do you want me to circle, left or right. And then I ended up on the side where the Peruvian necktie was there. And I'd recently been teaching it to my class on the Tuesday of fight week. So I thought, you know what? If I get this sub, after I've taught it in class, and there's a few students here watching today, like what more proof can you give them that this stuff works? So I jumped on it and his head just popped out, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So I tried to make up for it with a twister in the end, and I just ran out of time.
Yeah, of course. But I think even when you fell off that position, and there's a couple of times where he was able to, give him credit, he was able to reverse positions.
He was quite good. He was quite good at every time he got taken down, he was straight away looking to stand back up, like in an instant. So give him credit for that as well.
And I guess explain to like people watching, like a regular person, like when you're already tired and you've worked hard to get into a position, what it feels like to lose that and then have to go again. Like, what's the mentality at that point in the middle of a fight?
Well, that's where if you don't have that fighter's mentality, then you pretty much lost, because you can, like you say yourself, you can be fighting so long to get a takedown. You like putting all into that takedown. You get the takedown and he stands up. You've just lost, let's say, 50% of your energy. Right. And now you got to do it again. So it's like, do you see it as now I've got to do it again? Or do you just, all right, that's in the past, let's go again? Like, there's two ways of going again. You know what I mean? So, but it's exhausting. It's extremely exhausting and mentally draining. You just got to look past it and just know you've only got, let's say, like 15 minutes of your life left to work. So do whatever you can do in 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah, it's a long 15 minutes. I can imagine. I mean, I guess the purpose of this podcast, I'm not sure if you know, is kind of just to uplift fighters. Like, I obviously love talking about the fights themselves, but it's more to kind of appreciate the consequences or the sacrifices that you guys make when you step into the cage. And, the consequences of losing in this sport can be extreme, but also winning. You can win and still, take damage, or you can still put a lot into it. I guess for now, my question would be, you're 4-1 in your last 5. You're on a great run at the moment, but in the middle, you obviously had a loss there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you've done a great job of bouncing back. What's that mentality like? I guess, you obviously, if you lose a position in a fight, it's still that same fighting mentality, but I guess on a bigger scale in terms of your career, to come back and now be on a 2-fight win streak and a really dominant, 30-27 unanimous decision.
Yeah.
What goes into that?
Well, do you know what it is like? It can be a lot of things, but I'd say I'd put it mostly down to the people you're around, the people you spend your time with, outside of fighting, and who's in the gym with you, because it's all well and good being strong-minded on your own and thinking a lot is a lesson, and we come back. But when people lose twice in a row, it's harder to keep telling yourself it's just a lesson.
Right.
You'll come back, and sometimes you might even lose a 3rd time in a row. And then when you get to that point where you can't see it as a lesson and you'll come back, then it comes down to who are you gonna meet in the next 10 minutes? Like, what's he gonna say to you?
Right.
Is he gonna tell you to, maybe look at other avenues, or is he gonna be like, no, you just keep going? And do you know what I mean? So the people you're around, your coaches, the words, the information you choose to let into your mind will filter how you respond to these situations. And there's been times where you really think, oh God, like I've just lost again and again, and now my record is negative. It's negative. I'm not really going to get far of a negative record, not really going to get on any good shows of a negative record. And then, but you just got to push through that. And if you can't push through that, hopefully you're around people who can push through it for you. So you just put the faith in the fact that they believe you can do something, and you just do what you do blindly to the fact, just do it blind.
Right.
If you got people saying that they trust you can make it, and you're unsure about it, then just go blind and just put your faith in that person, and then eventually it pays off in the end. And that's kind of the story of me, of how I came back after being, I think, maybe 4-2 at 2-4 at one point.
Right.
So,
well, now you're on a pretty good streak, 4-1 in the last 5. But I guess, I do a lot of like episodes and little discussions about kind of the fickleness of MMA fans and like the media. Oftentimes you'll see just on social media, or just even in like circles when you're watching fights with a bunch of people, the way people sometimes talk about fighters, and how they can change up on fighters after like one loss.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
there's a lot. Do you as fighters feel that a lot? Is that something that?
Well, it's something that it's becoming more known now than it used to be, especially since the growth of like social media and stuff. Let's say like maybe 6 years ago, Instagram wasn't so big. So if you take a loss, imagine if you took a loss and then a loss in an embarrassing way, it wouldn't really go viral as such. You'd need to be a big name for it to go viral. But now you can take an embarrassing loss on a show in the back end of nowhere, and still get 50,000 people see it, just because of how big things are.
Right.
But then in terms of like the people switching up on you straight away, is you need to understand that who's real with you when you are winning, but before you lose. Like don't wait to lose or wait to take a hit to then realize, oh, these people weren't really by my side properly. You should know that and think about that while you're on top, or while you're in a good place. So I've got a small circle. Obviously, I'm grateful for all the support, but in my head already, I know the the 5 or 6 that are there, regardless of wins or losses. So even if I have a big following, I know the 5 or 6 that will be there when that big following is gone, and that big following will go when you take a loss.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's just the way it is. Sometimes people follow you because it's cool to do so.
Right. And I guess, I don't know if this is a personal question, but have you experienced that, early on in your career? If you suffered a loss where you've had people like, I don't know, either on your team or friends where they've just absolutely not been there for you if you have taken a loss, even if you've been winning and then you take a loss and then they're not there at that point?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, I've had it, yeah. I've had it. Not in a way that should make me feel upset or disheartened.
Right.
More in a way that's like, I should have expected it to happen. Because you should see the signs of when you're communicating and why you're communicating and how comes we're communicating at this time, or why am I being helped at this time? And then maybe you lose and your name doesn't do much for their brand or whatever it is at the time, and then you realize that they're not shouting you out anymore, asking if you want to do XYZ or promote XYZ, and so I've had it, but then I've learned from it. So there will always be ups and downs,
right?
But I can deal with them better now.
Perfect.
Based on the past.
That a lot of the reason I started this podcast is not only for myself, or not only for other people, but for myself to kind of learn about the lives of fighters. Like, because I have so much respect for fighters, but I've never been a fighter myself, and I don't want to ever, claim that I've, been in a fight or taken a punch myself. But what would you say is the biggest sacrifice you make as a professional fighter? Like, explain to in the normal stuff that everyone does on a day-to-day basis. What's the biggest thing you sacrifice for your career?
I don't know where to start. We could be here all day. We could be here all day. Like, start with the basics. Birthdays. The reason why I don't, not to sound like all like depressive and stuff, but you just become numb to a lot of events just because you probably can't celebrate anyway. Like, birthdays is one thing. I used to always celebrate them till I was about maybe 20, 21, and then it just became a point where whenever your birthday is coming up, you're in camp. So people want to get you cake, but you can't eat it. So that's first of all, that's my own birthdays and I celebrate. And then it comes to other people's birthdays, and it's like you're not really going to go out and put yourself in an environment where you could end up drinking loads, eating loads and whatnot. There's that. And then there's flipping, you start saying no to people all the time. They stop asking you because they know you're going to say no. So you start to lose. That's when you start to lose a sort of friend group. You have, they start to separate. Bro, I'm telling you, I can go all day. There's that. Then you get relationships where it's like, oh, you're in the gym all day. You're in gym. It's like, but you have to be in the gym. So it's up to you now. Do you want to be with do you want to do that stuff life? Would you want to sacrifice it for the gym? Are they going to help you or not help you? If they're not going to help you with your career, then is there really point being with someone who's not going to see your vision? It's families. You miss out on family times, family events sometimes. The list just goes on. Like it can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So that's just a few. That's a few which I've been through. Yeah, but I'm sure there's fighters who have much more, probably even more deeper sacrifices than I have.
Of course, I can only imagine, right? Because the time dedicated to, I guess, respect the sport as a fighter. You're getting in there and you're risking it all. So you can't really cut too many corners, I imagine. And yeah, it's great to learn about. Especially, I didn't even think about it genuinely with the relationship side of it. To be honest, the fact that you actually physically have to be in a space so long every day, that it probably does affect a lot of personal relationships. Like,
so it's not that not to say relationships don't work.
Of course,
it's just that you've now filtered down your I don't know how to call this. If there were 100 people you could be with, you've now cut that down to 50. Do you know what I mean? Because 100 won't all put up with it. 50 might, you know. So that's cut the pool down. Basically,
those are the real ones. The 50 real ones.
the 50 real ones, yeah. 50 real ones out there, and then the rest just they just want to cuddle 24/7.
I guess my question for you is to kind of give you the floor is, what is one thing you wish like normal people and even just normal people who don't watch MMA or combat sports and even fans of combat sports, like what's one thing you wish they understood about being a fighter?
Kind of like maybe the questions you're asking, to be honest, like I wish normal people understood what I wish they understood. First of all, how tired you actually get in camp. Like there's nothing worse on the fight week than hearing the average person say, I'm hungry or I'm tired. Bro, like that is I can't tell you how much that winds me up. Because I'm already like short-tempered anyway, because there's no food in me, and I'm weak from the 6 weeks of training and strength conditioning. And then I come into someone who's probably, meet someone in the gym who's not a fighter. He's at the gym for a hobby.
Right.
I don't know, maybe he's had breakfast, but he might not have had lunch yet. And he's like, oh, I'm so hungry. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh, it's like, get a grip. Come on. So for someone who's generally hungry and tired to say they're hungry or tired in a camp where they're generally depleted and cutting calories and putting their body through havoc.
Right.
Me saying I'm tired is not the same as you saying you're tired. Not to say I know what everyone's going through in their life, because I know everyone goes through their own things and they may have had but you're not fight camp tired. So fight camp tired is not me saying I'm tired in fight camp is not me saying I'm tired out of fight camp, basically.
Yeah. That's hilarious. It makes me think of myself.
I wish they understood that one. There you go.
I remember yesterday at Muay Thai, like it was only an hour session. It was a difficult session. I remember thinking, oh, I'm thirsty, but I'm never going to say that again. I'm never going to say I'm tired or I'm thirsty ever again.
Don't. Here's some advice. If you're ever training around someone who's cutting weight, don't ever tell them you're tired, you're thirsty, you're hungry. Never. Don't just keep it to yourself.
I won't do it. I promise. But do you think? I guess my question there would be: do you think kind of going through these experiences, going through these weight cuts, going through these fight camps, and like, I guess kind of coming face to face with true difficulty and challenging things, that it's made other stuff in life easier for you to kind of approach? Maybe if it's new things or, things that other people consider challenging.
Well, let's talk about like realness. Like, if we're making weight on a Friday, it means Thursday you can't really eat or drink anyway. So that's Thursday. A Thursday, most fighters don't eat. Most fighters don't. Well, they maybe eat maybe a couple of calories here and there. They definitely don't drink as much as they would drink on a normal day, and they definitely don't eat as much as they would eat on a normal day. And then you have people who have to do that their whole life in like third world countries, or not even third world countries, might even just be homeless people who have to do that their whole life. So it makes you think about what you actually do have when you start to feel like you don't have much, So I was having this conversation with some of the guys that I was cutting weight with last time. You just appreciate food, just basic food, basic water, so much more after a weight cut than you would do in general. So it kind of just makes you pull back a bit and think about life is actually much more tougher than you think for other people.
Right.
When you do start to do these things and you just think about how there's people that do this every day and have no choice. When we're doing it because we're trying to make weight. So,
right.
The appreciation, gratitude is heightened a lot.
And that's actually incredible perspective, actually. And but two more questions, I guess. Kind of back to the more technical side of things. Like, what do you think about weight cutting in general? I know there's like a big debate about like how weight cutting is obviously it's bad for the fighters in a certain sense, but what's the solution to it? Because are you going to sanction fights of people's walk?
More weight classes,
right?
More weight classes. Yeah, because nobody wants to cut weight,
right?
But because people do it, you have to do it. You get it? Like, it's not the question people always ask that don't fight is, why don't you just fight at the weight above? It's because if I fight at the weight above,
there's a huge guy.
I'm fighting someone who's cutting weight to come down. And after we weigh in, he's going back there and I'm staying here. If not, might even go lower. Right. So if they had more weight classes, it would be a much easier, there'd be nice little checkpoints in between.
Right.
Not a whole load more weight classes, just a couple.
Yeah, like, maybe like in between 55 and 70, you have 65.
Just a couple. Not loads, just just a couple.
I agree completely. It's actually interesting. I'm in New York City at the moment, and I train at Henzo Gracie when I do Muay Thai. And I walked in yesterday to lock on my bike, and it was Gilbert Burns there and Diego Lopez were just standing on the mat. So I'm like, oh my God. So I go around obviously to go and meet them. And on the topic of weight cutting, Diego Lopez, I had no idea how he makes featherweight because he was ginormous. Like he was my hand 6'3", is my height, kind of maybe a little bit shorter, but humongous. I cannot believe he makes that weight.
He does it. And
he's a beast. I guess so. Last question. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. It means a lot. What's the next steps now? What after this performance? What are you thinking? What are you looking to do next?
On the topic of weight cutting, I want to go back down to lightweight for sure. I don't struggle as such to make 77. It's just no one likes to diet anyway. No one likes dieting. But to make 77, I only have to diet. But in the past, I've had to diet and just do a bit of a cut. So I want to go back to doing that now because I'm handling these guys at welterweight very well. But it's just kind of risky not risky, but I have to be very careful not to get hit because they're big guys. And if the big weight behind those punches hit me, it stuns me more than it does a lightweight. But for the most part of all my welterweight fights, I'm just dominating until I slip up or maybe switch off and then I get caught with something and then lights out. So I feel like at lightweight, I could break people.
Right. I mean, you definitely.
That's the plan. I could break people at lightweight. I can do this at welterweight.
No, I definitely agree with that. You've got such it's such a dominant grappling style. I mean, I remember even in the second round of your fight last night, there was like one takedown. It almost sent him through the canvas. It was absolutely slammed him. But yeah, so if you're doing to guys that big, he was a big guy as well. So if you're doing that to obviously big welterweights, then I can imagine, of course, the success you're going to have back down at lightweight. So anyway, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
You too. So let's get into the fights at UFC 309 that took place at the Mecca, Madison Square Garden this weekend in New York City. Wow, what an event. The fights delivered from the early prelims all the way to the top of the main card in the main event. But we've got to start at the fight or on the fight between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. I mean, these were two greats of the game that battled it out in the main event here. Jon Jones coming out on top with the third round knockout of Stipe Miocic. I mean, it was a beautiful vintage performance by Jon Jones. A spinning back kick to the ribs that puts Stipe Miocic down. And of course, Jon Jones follows it up with his patented deadly ground and pound with the elbows, and the ref with Stipe already out, basically, in terms of already out and down, with that body kick damage that hit the ribs, jumps in very quickly, and Jon Jones gets up, celebrates, does the Donald Trump dance to Donald Trump on the cage side, and Jon Jones, the inevitable man he is, wins again, and another huge name on his resume. His legacy is unrivaled in this sport, it has to be said. 17 straight title fights and another victory to his name, and a defense, his first defense of his heavyweight championship. But let's get into the fight and what I thought about when I was watching it. I thought Jon Jones looked spectacular, not just in terms of the performance, which we'll get into, but physically, he just came in looking a lot leaner than his heavyweight debut against Ciryl Gane. He had his abs there, and he looked more like the light heavyweight GOAT version of Jon Jones that we have seen in past years. But it became very obvious very quickly as soon as the exchanges started to happen that Jon Jones was dominating the range, as he always does. Those extremely long limbs that he has, the way he uses his fingertips and puts it in the eyes of his opponent when they advance towards him. He was controlling range perfectly, throwing those obliques to the front knee of Stipe, and those body shots were just absolutely beautiful. He was just a step ahead of Stipe in this fight. I think, he showed that he's just a level above in terms of his arsenal, which we spoke about in my predictions, in terms of just the fact that Jon Jones has unlimited tools in his arsenal, and he's going to go to those whenever he sees openings. The first big event or big example of that I saw in the fight was his ability to just trip Stipe. He kind of throws out a lead kick to that front leg of Stipe Miocic, actually steps past him, gets his arm around Stipe's neck and shoulders and body and torso, and just throws him over his own leg onto the ground and lands, I think, inside control. It's just an amazing ability by Jon Jones to control the pace of the fight, and even on the feet, he landed such good shots with the hands. I know people like to think that Jon Jones doesn't have that much power, and he's not gonna put you out cold like Alex Pereira with the hands, but he does have great shot selection, great thudding shots, and I think at one point, in the fight, he lands a right hand that completely stuns Stipe. He starts blinking his eye, and it definitely did some damage. But the way he finished that fight was vintage Jon Jones, vintage creativity, vintage destruction with that creativity as well. And I implore anybody to go and look at that finish. And Jon Jones is still a pound for pound number one, number two, number three, wherever you want to put him. I'm not going to do that debate right now. That will be for Thursday, I imagine. But an absolute vintage performance, and I think all credit goes to Jon. It's not just the fact that, and we'll get into it, of how Stipe looked, but Jon imposed his will in this fight and just looked steps and miles ahead of Stipe Miocic. And now that fight between him and Tom Aspinall becomes even more necessary for both the fans, the UFC as an organization, the media, but I think more than anything for Jon Jones, because I think when it comes to legacy, which he's been talking about for months now, that he's only fighting for his legacy at this point and he doesn't need to fight anymore, which he absolutely does not. He has nothing left to prove as a fighter. But at heavyweight, if he, truly wants to go down as Jon Jones can go down as the greatest heavyweight of all time, if he beats Tom Aspinall, and I think Tom Aspinall still has a great chance against Jon Jones, even though Jon Jones looked so great in that fight. But Stipe Miocic, we have to talk about Stipe here. If you would ask me, and I said this in my predictions, that if you would ask me about when this fight got rebooked, even when it was booked the first time, but especially when it got rebooked for this past November the 16th in Madison Square Garden, I would have told you that it's a ridiculous fight, that Stipe shouldn't really be getting a shot at the title after 4 years or almost 4 years of inactivity and coming off a devastating knockout loss to Francis Ngannou. But over the course of the fight week, I was kind of convinced that, Stipe is the greatest of all time at heavyweight. I thought that he looked really, really good. I thought physically he looked in shape. I thought he looked, even better than he had done in some of his previous fights, just physically. And, he looked motivated. and I really believe that it was going to be much more of a competitive fight than it turned out to be. And that's obviously credit to Jon Jones, but it is also credit to what many worried about in the build up to this fight, which was Stipe Miocic's age, the damage he's taken, and, you know, ring rust is real, you know, and I think we saw it in the co-main event, which we'll get into as well. Ring rust is real. You can't just spend 4 years or close to 4 years outside of the octagon, not under the bright lights, and then expect to come in and beat Jon Jones. But to be fair, with the greatness of Stipe Miocic, I as well believe that he could not necessarily turn back time, because I don't think it's one of those things. Not that's a Mike Tyson thing we saw, which was a ridiculous event between him and Jake Paul, I must say. But I think Stipe looked very, very slow. I think he looked sluggish, hesitant, and, you know, just unable to get into any sort of rhythm. And a lot of that is Jon Jones, but a lot of that I do believe is just a process or a consequence of time, father time. And I think it was definitely the good, moral, correct, and wholesome choice for Stipe Miocic to retire in the cage straight after. And in classic Stipe Miocic fashion, he didn't say much. He said, "I'm done, thank God." And, you know, he exited the octagon. You know, Stipe Miocic, what an amazing career. I need to talk about that. You know, I went over in my predictions, the amount of the rampage he went on in terms of knocking out the best heavyweights on the planet. And, you know, he held the belt, you know, 2 different times in heavyweight, 4 defenses of the title, the most in UFC history. His legacy is cemented. This fight for Stipe, it doesn't necessarily take away from his legacy. And, you know, that's an interesting point. I don't think it definitely adds something to Jon's legacy, because he defended the heavyweight belt. I mean, that's in itself is a huge thing. And to be doing it 16 years into his career, still at the top of the game, you can't deny that Jon Jones has a case for the greatest of all time, or is the consensus greatest of all time. The only caveat is that Stipe Miocic wasn't necessarily the rightful contender. And I don't want to say that, especially as, again, my whole podcast is about humility and honesty and understanding that I myself am not a fighter. So, you know, I can never do what Stipe Miocic has done in the ring, in the octagon. And I would never, you know, I'm not saying anything bad about Stipe. I just believe that Tom Aspinall is a generational heavyweight. The things we've seen him do to people, even like Martian Tybura, who was on the card, right? You know, what Tom Aspinall did to him and what he did to Janota Diniz. I mean, you'll see the levels that Tom Aspinall is on, right? Tom Aspinall is an extremely big, an extremely fast and explosive, intelligent, well-rounded heavyweight who offers the biggest threat to Jon Jones I can remember. And that's not to discredit all the legends that Jon Jones has taken out in his career, the elite resume that he has. But I just believe that at this point in Jon's career and at this point in Tom Aspinall's career, that's the fight we need. That's the fight the sport needs. And for Jon's legacy, that will do wonders. But to wrap up my reaction, I just believe that Jon Jones was on another level. And Jon Jones showed who he is, that he's the greatest of all time. And he just showed an immense ability to not only to dodge punches of Stipe. He was too fast for Stipe. He was too vicious for Stipe. He was too intelligent with the sweeps, with the clinch, the knees to the body, like I said he would do in my predictions. And, you know, just an all-round elite performance, complete domination by Jon Jones. But, you know, great fight, and I hope now we get the rightful fight next with Tom Aspinall. But moving on to the co-main event now, this was the fight I was most excited for. I was watching with a lot of Brazilians in the room. And obviously, I'd met Michael Chandler during fight week. So, you know, I was so excited to see this fight, to see Michael Chandler perform after 2 years of inactivity due to the complications he had in the lead ups to the fights with Conor McGregor, or at least the one officially signed fight with Conor McGregor. And obviously, Charles Oliveira is one of the most electrifying, most entertaining lightweights, probably one of the greatest fighters to ever grace the octagon, most finishes, most bonuses, the most fan-friendly fighter. I think, it must be said, and if I can, I'll put some footage in. Every time Charles came out at a press conference or at the weigh-ins, he got the biggest pop in the crowd. He got the most attention, the most applause, and it's fully, deserved, obviously. But let's go into this fight. I think, I was definitely expecting Charles to come out more aggressive. I said in my predictions that, in the Arman Tsarukyan fight, he looked a little bit hesitant or just trying to be a bit more controlled, which is not Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is a killer. Charles Oliveira goes for you, whether that's on the feet or on the ground. He's going to try and finish you every single second of the fight, and that's why he's one of the best ever. And he came out with that intention. He put the pressure on Michael Chandler from very, very early, able to get his back over and over again. And to be fair to Michael Chandler, he did a great job at defending the chokes, defending the rear naked chokes, and that Charles Oliveira was trying to cinch in under the neck, and was able to survive the submission attempts of Charles Oliveira, which is not an easy feat by any means for the guy that has the most submissions in UFC history. I thought that Michael Chandler. Let me start on Charles for a second. I thought Charles looked great. I thought his shot selection was great. He showed great attention to go to the body and kind of pin Michael Chandler up against the fence and make him, stand right in the pocket with him and just trade. And Charles is a bit more technical and technically sound and crisper with his shot. So when you're standing in the pocket, I think Charles is always going to win that battle. But Michael Chandler, my goodness, if he hits you, you are going to feel it. And after 4 rounds of domination by Charles de Bronx Oliveira, landing shots on Michael Chandler, getting him to the ground, threatening submissions, beating him up over and over again, tiring him out. Michael Chandler comes out in the 5th round and absolutely puts a remontada, a kind of almost comeback performance on against Charles Oliveira. And very similar to their first fight for the title, he almost gets Charles Oliveira out of there. I don't remember if he exactly drops him, but he's beating him up. Charles Oliveira's on the ground, and the ground and pound of Michael Chandler is vicious, very, very vicious. But he was landing a lot of shots to the back of the head, which at one point I thought, because the ref wasn't stepping in, or which is illegal for people watching, you can't hit people in the back of the head. I thought the referee was going to step in, and at no point did he look to do so. And so I thought at one point, at least me and the people watching did, that Charles Oliveira was going to be TKO'd. But as in classic Charles fashion, he takes the damage, gets back up, and is able to finish the round on Michael Chandler's back. And in classic Michael Chandler fashion, he leaps backwards with Charles Oliveira on his back. He leaps all the way back, smashing Charles on the ground. He screams "F it" before doing so in the most entertaining fashion. Gets up and does it one more time before the final bell goes and the fight is over. Michael Chandler, the 2 years of inactivity, I think, it definitely did wonders for him in terms of his ability to endure damage. And I think he was in great shape. I think he stayed disciplined throughout those 2 years, and it showed immense ability to come out in that 5th round, immense cardio to come out in the 5th round, push the pace and almost finish Charles Oliveira in that 5th round. But more than anything, I think that inactivity kind of showed in terms of he didn't seem to have that timing. And, when he hurt Charles, when Michael Chandler hurt Charles, he kind of lands a huge shot. And in classic Michael Chandler fashion, just goes guns blazing and throws a left hook so wildly that it actually takes him all the way down to his own knees. He kind of falls over with the force of the punch. And at that point, he kind of loses momentum, I believe. And, he doesn't quite capitalize on the fact that Charles Oliveira was very hurt in that situation. I think Charles Oliveira did a great job to win that fight. He's back now as the number 1 contender. He's going to fight for the title again. And, for him with a newborn, I think it's a newborn son, a newborn kid, he's got that reinvigorated enthusiasm and motivation to go out there and win a championship again. It must be said, that Charles revealed that he came into this fight with bad knee injuries. I think it's torn ligaments in his knee. He wasn't even able to train for the last 15 or 20 days. He was just doing weight training, and the resilience that Charles Oliveira continues to show and the dominance and the elite world-class fighter that he is just so impressive. For Michael Chandler next, I think he called out Max Holloway for the BMF title. Excuse me. And of course, he called out Conor McGregor yet again. And we still love to see that Conor McGregor fight. I think that's the level that Conor McGregor, if he is ever going to fight again, he needs to come back at is, fight like a top 10 top 10 lightweight, which Michael Chandler is, and that's going to be an entertaining fight regardless. But I do not believe that Conor McGregor is ever coming back to fighting. I refuse to be optimistic about it at this point, because as a fan of the sport, we obviously want Conor McGregor here, but we keep getting let down. And as media, as fans, you want to see Conor McGregor in the octagon, regardless of opinions about him out there. So for Charles, it's the winner of Arman or Islam next, and I'm obviously, at this moment, I'm predicting that Islam will win that fight. So we're going to see a rematch that should have taken place already before Volkanovski had to step in and take that head kick, unfortunately. But yes, that was the co-main event, an amazing fight, and Charles de Bronx Oliveira comes out with a dominant win over Michael Chandler, even though Michael Chandler had that moment. The fight before the co-main event, Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. Paul Craig came in as an absolute huge underdog. I think at one point Bo Nickal was a plus 1,200, which is absolutely crazy, but he deserves the respect because he's an absolutely dominant fighter when he's been in the UFC octagon. But Paul Craig is a huge step up for him. Paul Craig is a guy that's finished Jamal Hill. He's finished Ankalaev. He's got 17 finishes of 17 wins, I believe. He's an absolutely he's a great fighter who has taken the O's from undefeated fighters many times. And this fight did not play out visually how I thought it would. I did believe that Bo Nickal would make it a point to wrestle Paul Craig and show that he could be dominant even in the guard of Paul Craig. But again, Paul Craig's guard is very dangerous, and I think Bo Nickal recognized that and decided we're going to keep this fight on the feet. And it was a stand-up fight the whole time. I thought Paul Craig landed some great body kicks. He was doing pretty good in the stand-up, but obviously Bo Nickal was overall winning the exchanges. It wasn't the most eventful fight of all time. We have to admit, I heard a lot of boos, at least from the broadcast of the audience, wanting some more action, especially in the center of the octagon. But, I think maybe Paul Craig will be looking at that. I think he did quite well. He didn't take too much damage. And, it's difficult for Paul Craig, right? Because he doesn't have, I believe, the best, takedowns, and he wants to be on his back. So he actually wants to be taken down. So he probably was thinking that Bo Nickal was going to try and take him down. And once Bo Nickal tried and took him down, he was going to throw up that patented Paul Craig triangle and try and get him in there. But, I think a really entertaining fight by both guys. And I think Bo Nickal continues to get experience in the octagon and climb up the ladder towards, more elite fights. And at this point, I think he should be fighting a top 15 ranked person, a ranked guy. And I'm sure we will see that soon. But great respect to both of those guys. And I'm an absolutely huge fan of Paul Craig. I thought he put on a very, very good performance, and he should be super proud of himself. And obviously Bo Nickal to be able to pass that test with flying colors. I'm surely we'll see him soon again, hopefully. Now, the next fight, or the fight before that, was Viviane Araujo against Karina Silva. I, in my prediction, said Karina Silva will win this, and I know that Araujo is a super tough fighter, but I thought Karina Silva's submissions were so threatening, so dangerous, that she was going to be able to cinch up that neck and, just snatch that neck and get a choke. But Viviane Araujo showed excellent ability to strike on the feet and just dominate each and every position, in my opinion. Silva had moments of success, but Araujo dominated the fight. I thought she was just more technical on the feet, was able to land the bigger shots, and never let I keep mixing up the names. Never let Silva get into her rhythm. Araujo showed the veteran that she is, and it's a huge win for her because I think she was the underdog, the betting underdog coming into this UFC 309 event. So for her to go out there and stop the hype train of a Dana White Contender Series alum who had been submitting everybody and finishing everybody and having great performances is a huge credit and a huge boost to her career, which has put everybody on notice that Araujo is still around, and Araujo is a beast of a fighter. I think she landed such good shots and was able to slow Silva down with the body shots. And, I was so impressed with that performance because I really thought it was a lock that Silva was going to win. I just thought she was so dangerous, and she literally shut every single one of those threats down and was able to win quite comfortably, in my opinion. Huge respect to both of those fighters. They put on a great fight. But before that was Mauricio Ruffy versus James Llontop. Wow. Mauricio Ruffy, he reminds me so much of a prime Conor McGregor that it's unbelievable. I said that in my predictions. I think everybody can see the resemblance. I think Joe Rogan was speaking about it on the broadcast. You know, he shows such ability to dodge punches. He dodges punches with his face turning all the way 180 backwards, slipping them like the Matrix. He landed a knockdown on Llontop with a no-look left uppercut, left hook, left uppercut. You know, he is the most creative, most devastating, one of the most creative and one of the most devastating strikers I've seen in a while. It's so reminiscent of that Conor McGregor style. And, you know, Llontop is a really tough guy who wasn't training too much. I think he got this fight on short notice. He trains out of the Jackson's gym in Peru. He's a teammate of Oscar Ravelo, who's a champion of Fusion Fighting Championship in the welterweight division, who we're going to have on this podcast hopefully soon. But all of those guys are a really, really good gym. They've all got great records. But Llontop, to come into this fight and on short notice and miss weight, unfortunately, it was a catch weight bout on 165. Ruffy put on a show for the first 2 rounds. But then Llontop kind of started gaining a bit of momentum because Llontop isn't the greatest on the ground. He can only really... He's a much more of a stand-up fighter, so he depends on the hands a lot more. But Ruffy, in typical Conor McGregor fashion, slowed right down in the 3rd round. And even the way he looked, his body, his mannerisms, his gestures, the way he stood, the way he fights when he's tired is exactly like Conor McGregor. And it's probably just a biological thing with those people that have the fast twitch fibers, that knockout power in those first 2 rounds, the explosive muscle just can't, you know, it's kind of impossible for them to endure a 3 to 5 round fight all the way at the same pace. But Llontop started to build in that last fight. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Ruffy in his next fight as he takes more steps towards more difficult fights. Is that a thing? Is he able to, you know, go into deep waters? Are people going to be able to really wrestle him and gas him out and, you know, take away that gas tank and take away that explosivity early in the round so that he's not a threat in the way that people approach fights with Conor McGregor? But more than anything, Ruffy, what a star. I'm an absolute fan. You know, I'm supposed to be a bit impartial when it comes to media, of course. But Ruffy, I'm an absolute fan of his. He's part of that Fighting Nerds team with Carlos Prates, who I've spoken about on the podcast before, Barallo, Jean Silva. You know, all of those guys in that team are just absolutely devastating. And, you know, they're made for the highlight reels and they're bringing a super entertaining factor back to the UFC that's been missing, I feel like, for a while. And, you know, it's great to have things like the Fighting Nerds, like that group, that brand, that team that's just dominating. And I'm sure they're all building the momentum for each other. I just wanted to mention great fight. I just wanted to mention a couple of fights in the prelims. Now, I didn't predict any of these, but I thought the prelims were so spectacular that I just want to spend about 2 or 3 minutes talking about the fights. Jim Miller, I mean, 27 wins inside the UFC, most of all time. He extends that this past weekend, and, you know, a great submission. He snatches the guillotine against Damon Jackson, and everybody knew that as soon as he got that, it was absolutely over. And, you know, for him to have that moment at, you know, 40 plus years old at MSG, you know, amazing for the veteran. And he speaks so well after the fight with Joe Rogan in the post-fight interview. Amazing performance by him. I think my favorite fight of the night was on the prelims. It was David Onama versus Roberto Romero. Romero took the fight on, you know, very short notice. He was in shape, he was training, but he wasn't fight ready, of course. And Onama, I mean, he showed what an elite striker looks like. Now, Romero, on short notice, what a great performance. He comes out in the first round. He's absolutely dominating, putting the pressure, setting the pace on Onama, drops him. And then we start to see one of the best rounds of the year develop as Onama comes back, stays composed, picks his shots, amazing jab, super, super technical, is able to drop Romero in the same round. And, you know, we see an absolute war take place. And the fact that Romero had the heart to stay in that fight, as he kind of got more tired and Onama started to pick up the pace and Onama started to get more comfortable, start picking his shots better and start landing better. I just think that was the most entertaining fight of the night. Huge shout out goes to Romero and of course Onama taking the decision victory. But, crazy fight. And the last fight I'm going to talk about is Tybura versus Diniz. Now, I was super high on Diniz in terms of his stand-up ability because he comes from that professional kickboxing background. And I did believe that it would be enough to knock out Tybura in this fight. And he did have success early on, of course, Diniz. But then you just see the veteranship of Tybura. He gets on top of Diniz, and Diniz really had no answer to Tybura's ground game and didn't show any sort of technical defense to stop the mount. He kind of was just reaching his arms up above him, and it looked quite rookie. I know it's just so easy for me to say that as a guy sitting in his studio recording a podcast, but I truly believe that this is going to help Diniz because he needs to go back to the drawing board. He needs to work on his ground game, because he is such an elite striker that if he can stay on his feet and is able to get up from these positions, that he has such a great chance of knocking out his opponent. But Tybura, he gets on top of Diniz and throws John Jones-esque elbows. He starts landing them towards the end of the round. You see it split Deniz's face open. And, it's not until Diniz gets up after the round, he's kind of lying there. His team have to actually pick him up off the canvas because the ref didn't stop the fight. His team pick him up off the canvas. He's kind of stumbling around. He doesn't even know where he is. There's blood all in his eyes everywhere. And as the doctor is cleaning the cuts and the blood, you see that he's got one cut on his right eyelid, one cut on his left eyelid, and another cut on the bridge of his nose that was so deep. And, his eyes are still open. They clean the cuts, but the doctors come in, and this is the New York State Athletic Commission. They're not going to let anything go too lightly, and they had to stop the fight. I think the official reason overheard by John Anik was the fact that Diniz was still wobbly on his legs, but I think it was a decent doctor's stoppage, to be honest with you, because the cuts were so vicious, so bad. And, I think Diniz needs to go back to the drawing board, obviously get back to the ground game, but this is just a statement by Tybura that he is one of those fighters that you can never count out in this heavyweight division. And, I think if you want to be at the top of this division, that path will go through him as a fighter. But that was my reactions to UFC 309. What an absolutely amazing event. I mean, seriously, what a great fight week. I did a little series on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts of trying to meet the fighters this week. I had the absolute pleasure of meeting Michael Chandler at the Hard Rock Cafe, Corey Sandhagen, who wasn't fighting this weekend, in Central Park, and at Henzo Gracie as I went to Muay Thai class. I saw Gilbert Burns, who is one of my absolute favorite fighters in the world, and the beast that is Diego Lopez, and I was able to meet them and talk to them. I'd want to meet Tom Aspinall. He's a legend, and I'm hoping to do that soon at some point, somehow. But what a great fight week. It was a great experience this week, and I hope everybody at home enjoyed watching the fights, and if they didn't, I hope I explained them well enough to you, because it was an absolute great night of fighting. And thank you so much for watching the Backseat Fighter podcast today, and look for another episode on Thursday. Subscribe, comment, like, share. Head over to TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts for clips from the channel and more podcasts, more interviews coming. Thank you for watching.